Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Going Nuclear. I'm here with a very special guest. He's come all the way from Australia, probably one of the longest flights here from CNA. But his name is Alex Borovskis. He is the co-founder of Helexis, which is a nuclear startup and consulting firm in the nuclear industry. So, Alex, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, really appreciate the warm welcome.
It's my pleasure, Alex. So, coming from Australia, which is a country without nuclear, you started your own nuclear startup. Tell us the origin story. How did that start?
Cool. Thank you for the question. I think that, I know that Australia has a very rich nuclear ecosystem, but it doesn't have an energy ecosystem. So it has a research organization called ANSTO, which has one of the most advanced research reactors in the world. And it does a variety of different applications across industrial applications, across human health, and also materials research. And with that as well, they have a very large ecosystem around uranium production.
Okay, nice. And tell me about what experiences in Australia did you gain, which led you towards a startup, and also tell me about that entrepreneurial mindset. Right? It takes a lot to just put yourself out there, start a frontier, like a startup in nuclear, something very specialized.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate enough in my career to have a very diverse set of experiences. So I started my career as a project engineer, working on different capital projects across nuclear medicine, across radioactive waste management, and then was fortunate enough to have some project leadership and project management experience, and then ultimately moving up as an operations manager. And in my role as an operations manager, where I was leading a large team, I also had the opportunity to provide some consulting support to the Australian government on a variety of different nuclear-related initiatives, a lot around radioactive waste management, and that gave me a lot of experience in things like community consultation and developing major infrastructure. And also, I had the opportunity to help interface with teams that were working on developing new technologies. So these were things like nuclear waste processing technologies and immobilization technologies, new nuclear medicine products, and also radiation detection technologies. So I really enjoyed that interface between the strategic and the technical, and also helping to bring some of these technologies to market. So I kind of clustered all of that and consolidated all of that experience and decided to form Helixos, which focuses at that intersection of strategy and technical work.
So a lot of folks watching this understand the technical side. They come from technical backgrounds or interest in the technology. Tell us a little bit about strategy. I think strategy is sometimes not really discussed in people's careers,
Mhm.
right? What type of mindset do you need, and what is strategy all about?
Yeah, great question. So in the discipline of strategy consulting, you're basically trying to help answer commercial or business related questions, and in our context, it's within the nuclear domain.
Hmm.
So what we're doing is we are helping to understand what are the capabilities, the products and services that different organizations have, and then helping to understand how they can best make the largest impact with those capabilities that they have. So it's about looking at what are they uniquely positioned to do, looking at how they are placed within the global landscape, and then also helping them to express that potential to potentially go into new domains or frontiers as well.
How important is strategy for projects or for companies in general?
It's the foundation. I think it's really important that, actually, I think first principles is values. I think it's really important for an organization to have a very clear and firm set of values and principles which underpin the culture and how the team operates. But then kind of coming down to the next level, I think strategy is critical because it puts you on the right path on where you're going, and it doesn't matter how hard you work if you're running really fast but in the wrong direction. So it's really important to really set that course.
I think that's a great analogy. Running fast, but in the wrong direction. Like a lot of people think like hard work will get them to a certain destination, but it's like when a plane lifts off, even a slight millimeter in its in its direction can take it to a totally completely different destination.
Yeah, that's how I actually got here from Australia, you know. But I think you're completely right in that it's really important to have that focus and to really have the right direction, because I think I think that also coupled with a really strong strategy, above average efforts do get above average results in a lot of cases, but you need to make sure that those impacts are made in the right place.
One of the things that you're working on is fusion technologies. Fusion is probably one of the hottest topics right now, where there's a lot of investment. There's a lot of technological development and breakthroughs going on. Tell us about your thoughts on fusion, the fusion landscape.
Mhm. So fusion is going to come quicker than people think. Where there's at an inflection point at the moment where there are a lot of organizations that are working on different approaches and configurations to potentially make fusion happen. And there's the constant narrative that it's always 20 years away and it's always 20 years away. I think that this is a very unique time in history for this technological development for a few reasons. One is a lot of the enabling technologies are now at a level of maturity that's able to facilitate a lot of the demonstrations and experimentation that allows them to be able to showcase fusion. So what's happening here is that there's also a large inflection point of private sector getting involved in fusion.
Mm.
So there's actually more private sector investment in some nations than there is public sector investment. And that's a completely different paradigm than it used to be. And with that comes, very, very agile, very fast moving startups that are looking at different approaches to make this succeed. So with capital being available, with technological advancements providing a really good foundation to be able to do the testing, they're getting a lot of great understanding of material science and the phenomena of plasma. They're able to potentially make these breakthroughs. And there's also been a major breakthrough in the last 3 years in the US with that Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory Facility, the National Ignition Facility, which we're able to showcase scientific break-even of fusion.
Why is there private capital going into fusion? Fusion is perceived to be so risky. So why is there so much private money being funneled into fusion?
So with high risk comes high reward. There's a lot of investment coming from the venture capital community who see that despite it being a moonshot or a really difficult problem to solve, if they're able to solve it, they see that the opportunity is very large. So with that, it has a place in certain portfolios for investors as that high risk, high reward opportunity.
So tell me about the technologies that are out there, and what technology do you think is the most promising right now?
Yeah, great question. So there are three key approaches to delivering fusion. The first is called magnetic confinement, which uses magnets to confine the plasma. And then there's a process of pushing them close together to then achieve fusion and then extracting that heat. There is a second class, which is called inertial confinement, which is usually lasers or projectiles using inertia to be able to cause fusion to occur. And then the third is called magneto-inertial confinement, which is actually a hybrid of those two aforementioned groups. Um, I think it's all going to come down to cost. Basically, there may be some of these solutions that will be able to achieve fusion and be able to have breakthroughs, but if they're not able to deliver an economic generator, they're not going to have a place in the market. And I think that this journey is one that the fission sector is going through at the moment, where in the Western world, there's been some cost overruns for the delivering projects. And what we want to see is that the fission sector improve, but also I think for the fusion technologies to be able to compete in that landscape, it needs to be able to do it economically. So I think they need to have some certain features or characteristics of the design that allows them to have a very strong economic case.
Yeah, the economic case is an interesting question because a lot of the times, you have reactors that are paper reactors,
Yeah.
right? Like they make sense. On paper, it's like it works. And then you go on and build it and you have a demonstration reactor. You're like, oh, shoot, there's so many more operational
Hmm.
constraints. Sure. There's so many more challenges. And I feel like that's where strategies comes in. That's where it's really important.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the when it comes to the techno-economics of some of these reactors, you need to consider supply chains as one. Supply chains are a sticking point for the fission industry at the moment, because we've had to resurrect them, because we've had a time when there's been a gap of deployments. And for any technology to succeed, they need to have maturity in their supply chain, redundancy, and also, as we're seeing some of, geopolitical things play out, there's also important to have potentially some onshoring of these capabilities as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're living in interesting times, and I think geopolitical challenges they impact technological progress.
Mhm.
So it's important to like make sure everything is being considered. What else are you excited for when it comes to this nuclear renaissance?
I'm excited for people to build. I think that the industry has done a fantastic job in getting bipartisanship in many Western economies around the world, and that is a major success. And there's also been a lot of development with regards to some new concepts and small modular reactors, some advanced concepts as well, and then also fusion as well, as another paradigm there. But ultimately, we need to build. We need to be able to do this economically, and we need to be able to showcase success. So I think it's time for the industry to really, grab the shovels, get into it, and make it happen. And ultimately, I think that in the next few years, as we're doing some of those deployments, we'll be able to really get a sense of the trajectory of nuclear moving forward.
Yeah, I think the challenges are interesting because countries in the West haven't really built nuclear power reactors for decades, really 30, 40 years.
Yep.
And now we're at a point where we need to build, and we need to build fast. And then on top of that, there's these massive electricity demands. So kind of putting all of our eggs in one basket, um, which seems like a heavy lift.
Yep.
Okay, it's like, how are we going to do that? So what are your thoughts? Like this challenge, how will we overcome it?
It's a hard one. I think there needs to be some strategic insight with regards to how projects are structured. It needs to be some insights with regards to how supply chains are supported to be able to do that. And I think there's a role for both public and private sector in doing both of those things. On top of that, when you went into the discussion of demand, I think that there's a very fortunate opportunity for the nuclear sector to be able to supply to the emerging demands of data centers. And ultimately, I think that this is some of the first time in like recent history that we've seen demand increase for nations dramatically. And with that in mind, I think there needs to be some thinking around um, successful deployments in other sectors for electricity, on grid scale electricity that then support some of these data centers demands as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the data centers. I think data centers are such like they're the bread and butter of the AI revolution.
Yeah.
I think we're living in the midst of that revolution with generative AI like ChatGPT
Yeah,
and these generative AI concepts. It's insane how much electricity these data centers take up. I was looking at some stats, and data centers consume as much electricity across the world as all of Canada.
amazing.
And I was like, what? Not only there's electricity, but then there's also water usage because data centers use drinking water, like very clean water, to cool these centers. And this water isn't even recycled.
Yeah.
And so I feel like nuclear can solve the electricity problem, but also the water problem,
Mhm.
right? Like desalination of water and keeping a clean water supply. What are your thoughts on AI, nuclear supporting the AI revolution?
I think that nuclear and AI are going to be a power couple. I really like that kind of analogy, because I think that when it comes to firm, clean, always on electricity, which is the requirement of data centers, there is no other better generation solution. I think that, and that is being realized by some of the hyperscalers, the Meta, the Amazons of the world, who are starting to put investments into companies to be able to realize that, and they're growing their nuclear teams. So ultimately, how I see it is that it's going to be deeply intertwined, but at the same time, the opportunity is there for the nuclear industry to be able to deliver successfully, to be able to realize that potential.
This episode is being recorded live at the annual CNA conference, Canada's largest gathering of professionals from across the nuclear industry. If you want to know more about the association's work, please click on the link in the description below.
Nuclear, it takes time, right? Like a reactor can take like 6, 7 years to just build.
Yep.
Okay. So, but data centers, it's more of a fast paced type of building. Um, how do you see these technologies fitting together? Is it small modular reactors? Is it fusion? Is it a mix of both? What are your thoughts?
I think that the deployment timelines of both of those there, if you were to get a data center today, I think you would have some challenges with regards to coupling the two. So I think that as these organizations think about their forecasts and projections with regards to how AI is going to come online, they then need to look at what is the technologies that are available in the market, what is their technology readiness, what is the deployment timescales for them, and then there needs to be some kind of a matching of what will couple with their demand requirements. So I think that's a really interesting exercise to undertake. It probably means that there may be some kind of technologies that will not fit that requirement. You know, if you're looking to build a data center in the next 5 to 10 years, you may be challenged in getting certain technologies. So we'll have to see what happens there.
For sure, and I think it's really interesting that nuclear facilities like 3 Mile Island, right? I think at 3 Mile Island, obviously, for those that are watching, one of the units went through a reactor core meltdown.
Yeah.
The second unit was completely fine in terms of operations. However, it was shut down early, and so Microsoft actually has made an agreement with Constellation to purchase electricity from that reactor station, and so this reactor is now getting revived, which is unheard of, right? Like in the past few years, these stations were being shut down across the U.S. en masse. Um, what do you think about the future of those stations which had potential, but are now in an in a situation where they can be revived?
Yeah, I think again it comes down to the economic case because there's some of these reactors that have been they're in safe states at the moment. It's really important to understand if revitalizing or resurrecting them, what's the economic case for it. So you can see that some of the drivers behind these reactors coming online is that there's a huge demand signal. They're hungry for electricity. People need energy. So the driver is pretty clear on that side. But ultimately, they're in different states with regards to get what the investment is required to get them up to an safe operational state. So I think it's a case by case analysis to understand what is the requirements and input of capital to be able to get it there. But ultimately, if you have a reactor sitting there, in almost all cases, unless there's been some decommissioning program that's already been undertaken, it makes sense to resurrect them.
100%. Yeah, you got that concrete, you got
Yeah,
the pressure vessels, you got sometimes steam generators that are
definitely.
completely operational.
Yeah.
So why not just turn it on and obviously it's not that simple. Sometimes you
Yeah.
gotta refurbish a lot of the parts. So, but you know what? Back to entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship in the nuclear industry is very interesting because for those that are watching, there's utilities which hire a lot of people, right? There's utilities, and then you have research organizations, you have consulting firms. What does it mean to be an entrepreneur in the nuclear industry?
So my perspective is that the nuclear industry is it's really important for consistency and predictability in the nuclear industry. You know, and that comes from the culture of utilities, making sure that power is energy is always on. Uh, and I think there's an element of conservatism when it comes to some of the decision making and things like that. So I think it's important that there are pockets of people and communities that are focusing on trying to, extend the paradigm and look at new ways of working, look at new technologies, look at just completely new things. And that's the role of entrepreneurs in our sector. I think that In our case, as a consulting company, what we bring is that firstly, like a global perspective, and secondly is we hyper focus in certain areas, so we're able to bring knowledge and expertise and insights from different organizations, from different segments within the market and different geographies. And what that does is it allows a very rich analysis to be able to be undertaken and recommendations from a diverse pool of organizations.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, absolutely. I think you hear the story of Mark Zuckerberg quitting university and then
Sure.
going to launch Facebook, right? And I think, okay, cool. Like that was possible for that specific period of time. The technology readiness and of like Facebook and it was something that was very new. I feel like for nuclear startups, you need to have that industry experience. So it's awesome to see that you're coming from that industry background, you have that tribal knowledge, and then now you're kind of you're providing that service to the world.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And I think the other dimension is the industry is also benefiting from some of the new emerging reactor technology companies, yeah, SMR, micro reactors. There are some of these startups which actually have people that didn't come from the nuclear sector. They come from space, they come from other heavy industry or high tech manufacturing, and they're bringing their own ways of working and expertise and trying to apply it to nuclear problems. And I think that's also very valuable for our industry to be able to absorb some of those insights and approaches to be better. I think that the nuclear industry is unique, but in some ways it's not that unique. I think when it comes to certain design philosophies in other highly regulated industries, there are parallels there that you can bring professionals from other domains, and it will be effective.
As someone from Australia, which has a lot of parallels, I would say, with Canada in terms of the culture here, in terms of the even the geopolitics at times. Um, what are your thoughts on Australia embracing nuclear?
I think that Canada and Australia have a very similar foundation when it comes to nuclear in some ways, and I spoke about this earlier. One being we have a very rich uranium heritage, both major suppliers of uranium to the world. We both have a really good base of nuclear science technology and operating very effective, very reliable research reactors, and also a rich medical isotope industry. At some point in history, Canada kind of diverged and has developed a very well developed and thriving nuclear energy ecosystem. Australia didn't. At the moment, the discussion is quite polarized. It's very heated and spicy and it's within the culture wars, unfortunately. I think that if you want to be able to reconcile that kind of energy trilemma, and especially considering some of the use cases that are within Australia, for example, remote mine sites and things like that, nuclear has to be part of the agenda. And I think that there's a lot of discussion and conversation happening at the moment, but ultimately it's going to be an ongoing conversation. And ultimately, even if there is a very motivated government and leadership on nuclear, there still needs to be some bipartisanship, and there still needs to be an engaged social license and community within Australia. So I think the journey is ongoing. And ultimately, I'd love to see it in Australia, but fortunately, I get to work internationally and still make an impact in other nations that are looking and work in nuclear.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. I think in the year 2020, I actually met Alex at a conference before COVID in
Mm.
Australia. And when I went there, I was really blown away by the amount of nuclear professionals, like at ANSTO, that have nuclear engineering backgrounds. So there's like nuclear engineering programs offered in many universities in Australia.
Mhm.
Like I've met people doing PhDs in nuclear engineering, undergrads in nuclear engineering, and I'm like, wow, like they have the programs, they have the workforce, and I see how a nuclear program can easily be created.
Mhm.
So I do see that really cool vision for the industry in the future. So yeah, I think this was a really cool chat. I really enjoyed speaking to you about these topics. Is there any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
Firstly, really appreciate the discussion and thank you for your time. It was a great discussion. I think the industry needs to build. We need to put the next steps forward. We need to showcase that we can deliver on these projects to be able to realize the potential that's really in front of us. And I think that all of the tailwinds are in our favor, and we've got to soar in those tailwinds. So let's build, and it's a very exciting time ahead.
Awesome. I think that's a great message for the entire industry to motivate us. So thank you so much, Alex. If you want to find more information about Helexis, please, in the link below, I will include a website where you can find more information about the company and what they do, as well as Alex's contact if you're interested in reaching out to him. Thanks again for watching. Till next time, take care.